Hey everybody, it's Dan and Don, and we are from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Once again, that website address is www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com, the internet's best place for clinical trials content and information. Today we are interviewing Dr. Jonathan, and he's also interviewing us. He's got his own show. It's not out yet, but it's a matter of weeks before it comes out. So everyone stay tuned. He's going to talk to you about that. Welcome, Dr. Jonathan.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
And we should say future doctor.
That's
You're,
right. Yes, the doctor in my Twitter name is kind of a character name. I won't be a real doctor for about 2 or 2.5 weeks when I graduate from medical school. But it's still my stage name. But you can call me Jonathan. That's
okay.
That works.
All right, Jonathan. A lot of people already know you from Twitter. If you don't, you need to follow him.
That's right.
And he's, like I said, he's going to be a doctor. He's very involved in social media, and there's a big opportunity in the healthcare space. And he's got a very unique perspective on things. And, he's here to talk to us today about clinical trials, a little bit about himself, and about social media. So we'll just get started. Why don't you introduce yourself for those of the audience members out there who don't know who you are? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, what things you're interested in, stuff like that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm known as Dr. Jonathan on Twitter. I'm a fourth-year medical student, soon to be graduating in a few weeks, and I'll be doing a residency in family medicine in northern Chicago, which I begin in mid-June. Really looking forward to that. I think it'll be a really fun experience. I have to tell you a little bit about me, I have quite an extensive background in theater, specifically musical theater and also dramatic theater. And concurrently with that, I always had an interest in medicine. And I tried to come up with a way to combine both of them. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I discovered Twitter. And I realized that there were so many other folks out there who had similar interests to me, both medicine and also media and medical broadcasting, things like that. And I realized that there's a really big need for people who know what they're talking about and people who are well qualified to be in that realm, talking to patients and talking to other people out there in the social media spectrum. And there are a bunch of people out there, and everybody's a patient, but there are specifically lots of people who advertise themselves as patients, specifically with chronic illnesses, who are on Twitter, who are blogging, who are really out there, and who are really starting this new conversation with doctors, with nurses, with other healthcare professionals, on Twitter, on Facebook, but in the social media realm, and it's really an untapped field, and we're still in our infancy in the field, and it's really going to become part of mainstream medicine in the near future. This aspect of active patients and socially media active patients who are much more active and proactive in their own health, and social media is a fantastic way to do that, and that's where I come in.
Excellent. Jumping right into the social media thing, and I asked because I got asked this the other day during our last interview where we interviewed Diana from D. Anderson and Company. They're a big patient recruitment firm for clinical trials.
Oh, okay.
And she asked me, what I thought of patients like me. And I said, well, I mean, I know of it. I know it's a big, thriving community. I haven't been in it because, fortunately for me, I don't have any medical conditions, and they don't, as far as I know, they don't allow you to go in there unless you have something where you can share with other people. But what do you think about that as a doctor or as a future doctor?
Now, can I just clarify that? Do you mean, what do I think about participation in trials, or what?
No. What do you think about patients like me? That one website. It's like a social. They're trying to make it like a Facebook for people with medical conditions.
Oh, okay, I see.
And Yeah, I don't know if you actually heard of that one or.
No, no, I haven't, but I do know that there are many people out there, as I mentioned, with chronic illnesses who are very active in the blogosphere and also on Twitter, and who also form communities. And they even on Twitter we have different chats for specific chronic illnesses that are very popular. Specifically, I know people who have diabetes do have a very popular diabetes social media advocacy chat that they do, and there's also other ones as well. And if anything, I do know that population is very willing and ready to get out there on the social media realm and become as active as they can in their own advocacy, and also just getting the word out to people about what their condition is, and also where you guys come into play, also getting the word out there for future future clinical trials, to get attention out there about their illness and how it exists. But if there's anything, I don't know if I'm answering exactly what you were asking, but if there's anything that I've learned from working with a lot of patients with chronic illnesses, and even patients without chronic illnesses, like you or I, who just want to be proactive in our health and want to maintain health, is they're very ready and willing, and we are really at the incipient stage of that. But so any modality that will enable people to do that more, such as the Facebook type of platform that you mentioned, I think would be an excellent idea.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, how do you see social media having a future impact on medicine, on how the practice of medicine?
That's a great question. There's a lot of different ways. One of which, what I think is most important, is patients learning about either their own condition or their own preventative health issues. Because right now, although we are in the age of the internet, still there are many patients, and I would say unfortunately the majority of patients, who are maybe too busy in their life, or maybe they don't think it's that important, but who their only method of getting information about their health is when they're one-on-one with their doctor. And that doctor may or may not have the time to sit down and explain to them everything that they need to know about that. But with social media, patients now can become much more well-educated about things that are out there. They can also become much more well-educated about how to maintain health, how to prevent illness. And even if they have a chronic illness, such as diabetes, such as lupus, such as autism, cerebral palsy, many, many illnesses out there, they can network with other folks who also have that illness or a similar condition and gain support that way, gain ideas that way. And we're already seeing a lot of that right now. And which is, I think most patients will agree, that's a really fantastic support group, especially for folks who may be the only person they know with a certain diagnosis, or specifically might be the only person in their age group they know with that diagnosis. And now you can get on Twitter, you can get on Facebook, and you can network with those people. You can have a blog where you blog about it, get comments from people from around the world who may have insight into that condition because they have it, but you would never meet that person even in your own city. So that's really the future of social media. Really, though, it falls in the hands of the patients. I think patients are going to become more empowered with the knowledge they have, and it's also good for doctors and healthcare professionals who also learn from it, but also have to stay on their toes. You know, they have to know that now we have patients who are much better educated, and who expect their doctor, expect their healthcare professional to be up to date on their condition, know the most recent clinical trial data about treatment for their diabetes or whatever their condition may be. And so I think it's good for both. It's good on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, and speaking of clinical trials, I mean, you can become a lot more proactive with this whole thing. We had one of our first guests was E-Patient Dave.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
sure you
I know
with
him. Yes.
He was nice enough to be on our show when we were, we had a much smaller audience than we do now, and we're forever grateful to him. But social media literally can save lives, as in his case. I mean, it played a large part in saving his life. Like, that is huge. That's people underestimate.
Absolutely, and E-Patient Dave is a fantastic story, and everybody out there should read his book if you haven't yet. But he's a remarkable patient and a remarkable example of the power of social media. Really, he's one of the earliest examples, I think, of that became well known about the power of social media. But it even goes beyond that. I mean, social media has a lot of power to it. I mean, about a year ago, I was involved with somebody who was injured on a bike trail, and the only communication she had was through Twitter, and some of her Twitter followers were able to contact the authorities and get her the help she needed. And so it kind of even has that.
Was that Lay?
Yeah, it was Lee Fazina, who is on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yes, who's also a friend of mine, I should say.
Okay.
Really great person who was able to benefit from that episode when she got injured from the biking incident. So that was great to see. But yeah, especially E-Patient Dave, and also people even like me who's going into family medicine. There's a very large family medicine community on Twitter right now. We do family medicine chats. They even have conventions, and they meet up and they talk about all kinds of issues important to family medicine in the future. And we really are the future of family medicine. The people of my generation, I'm part of the youngest generation of new physicians in America, and we are that generation of physicians who's battling with the question of, are we going to friend our patients on Facebook? You know, are we going to friend our patients on Twitter? Are we going to talk to our patients on Twitter? And
yes, that. I'm glad you bring that up.
Exactly.
We work in a psychiatric clinic, and you know Trevor. Trevor's a social worker there. He's a therapist. And I had this interview with Trevor about a year ago, and I said, Trevor, with all this Facebook stuff going on, social media, would you mind talking about it on camera? And we actually went live, and he said that he's purposely not on these platforms because, the patients kind of overstep their boundaries. Now, we are in the psychiatric field, so that may be the reason why, but I think in the future it will be tough to even avoid it, even in the psychiatric field. But he brought an interesting perspective, because you hear all this hype about social media, and he brought a valid argument against him personally not being on it, and he said it's because he has to draw the line somewhere.
Exactly, and that is a whole entirely different discussion, but it's an important discussion that blends in well with what we're talking about. You will get a lot of, and this is talked about a lot, especially amongst healthcare professionals on Twitter. We'll talk about this all the time. Actually, we just mentioned E-Patient Dave. Just a few hours ago, one of his doctors actually tweeted out, E-Patient Dave is a patient of mine, but he put in parentheses, this would be a HIPAA violation unless that were public knowledge. So he was kind of saying it as a joke, but it was also very true. And physicians, healthcare professionals walk a fine line in social media when it's dealing between doing something good for healthcare and also violating a patient's privacy. And it is a very hot topic within doctors in social media. And it actually is the number one thing that I'll call it brick wall that I run into when I'm trying to get colleagues of mine to enter social media, the platform. Many of them are afraid of that. They're afraid that they're going to cause some kind of HIPAA problem, cause some kind of confidentiality breach. And they're also, even if that doesn't happen, they're afraid that they're going to have patients constantly bombarding them with questions and just put them in a very awkward situation. Now, there's no easy answer to this. The best advice that I've gotten so far has been, if you even have to think about whether or not something is a HIPAA violation, if you were to tweet it or Facebook about it, then it probably is, and you shouldn't tweet about it. But so, especially me and everybody who I know on Twitter, really, we take great lengths to try to make the statements that we make about any patient encounter. We try to make it as neutral as possible. We try to not mention the gender, not mention the age, not mention the specific diagnosis, not mention where we are when it happened, all kinds of things like that. It doesn't protect us 100%, but we're doing the best we can because we think that that small risk benefits that small risk is justified by the benefits that people receive. by us
Absolutely.
talking about, what we saw. Like something I like to tweet about a lot is what I see that's wrong with the medical system in America, and also I like to tweet about what I see that's right. So if I see a particularly bad practice, if I'm in the emergency room and I see a doctor do something that is ethically questionable, I like to try to tweet about it as best I can because I just want to try to bring attention to it.
Right.
I do the opposite way. If I see a fantastic interaction between a nurse and a patient, or a nurse and a doctor, or a doctor and a patient, or doctor and nurse, I like to tweet about that too. Of course, I'm not as worried about those. I'm more so worried about when I see things that go wrong. But I think it's important to put out there for people to know.
Yeah.
Because,
and it builds trust. It builds credibility. It builds
Absolutely.
trust.
And
It kind of puts a different filter on things.
Yeah.
In our industry, in clinical trials, obviously a subspecialty of medicine, we blog about this stuff all the time. We see things
Sure
going
do.
on. We see bad practices at other research clinics.
Yes.
We hear about it from former study participants. They said, hey, I went to such and such clinic. This is what they did. We've had them on the show.
Yeah.
We've had a guy who was held against his will in a study. And we, without mentioning names, we gave him the platform to speak. And it shows that, there are good aspects to clinical trials and there are some issues. And if you ever are caught up in one of these bad experiences, you know what to do.
Right.
Because this guy was nice enough to share his experience. And Don blogs about it all the time.
Yeah.
It's something to talk about. I can see one of the things that's going to come up, and it has to come up, is new legislation on HIPAA, especially with social media. They're going to have to relook at the whole thing and how it impacts a big issue. This is the wave of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some, I believe the AMA and some other medical groups have already made ethical statements about social media usage for physicians. And yeah, there is going to have to be more legislation about it because there is a lot of gray area currently, and that we're kind of just navigating. And there have been cases that I know about that I've heard of that have been literally, people have gotten in trouble for doing things like posting photos on Facebook of a unique clinical diagnosis that they saw in a patient. And they were doing it, even if they do it with the patient's permission, they can still get in trouble for it because there's a lot of gray area about when is that possible or not. I mean, I was in a situation a few weeks ago where I was suturing up a patient, and it was a really great patient, and we got talking, and it takes a long time to suture somebody who has a really bad wound, and so you get to form a good relationship. And at the end, he was taking these photos of his wound to post on Facebook because he thought it was cool, which is fine. Patients can do that all they want. But he wanted me to pose in the photo with him. And I had to be like, I'm sorry, but I just can't do that. That's too risky. But I would love to, though. But because I think it's fun and, or whatnot. But it's just not, we just can't do that yet.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dilemma.
It is. I mean... Yeah, like the first baby that I deliver, can I, and if the mom gives me permission, I can take a photo of me and the baby and the mom, but I can't post it on Facebook. That would be a big problem, even though that would be a really, no, I don't think anybody would say that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm sure at some level somebody would say that's a patient privacy issue. And again, even if the patient says, yeah, sure, you can do that, it's not... We don't exactly have waivers in hospitals yet that say, can we post this on Facebook, or for them to sign. But in most of these cases where people get in trouble, actually, I've never heard of a case where somebody had malintent. It was mostly they just thought they were doing something that was going to help other physicians see unique cases, and that they wanted to, spread the word. Because in medicine, we love to share unique cases because that's how we learn, and it just makes it really difficult, especially on social media. But not to belabor this point too much, but I'll just make one other point, that on Twitter, and I talk about this a lot, there's a lot of really fantastic doctors on Twitter. And I know that because I follow them. And these are a lot of really good people, and they know a lot, and you can learn a lot from them. And I'll even be in clinic one day, and I'll see a patient, and I'll be like, wow, this patient has a really interesting issue. I would love to get so-and-so's opinion on this. I would just love to just get their opinion on it, and I just wish I could tweet them about it and ask them, but you can't do that, you know. And in real life, though, it's called a curbside consult, where you stop your colleague in the hall and say, you know, off the record, what do you think about this? And you know that happens in hospitals across America every day. But on Twitter, where we have the access of the entire world rather than just the doctors that work in your hospital, we can't do that yet. But so I think there's a lot of benefits that can come from social media. But right now, there's too many caveats that inhibit some of that.
Jonathan, what gets my mind going here, and this is where it sort of puzzles me, is that I can open up a book, and in that book, they may have a picture of someone with a certain type of wound or illness, and you've got your text there where you can read on how they treated that, where that came from, in order to help you promote your knowledge. And for me, I don't see any difference between that and then doing this directly on social media.
Yeah, exactly. That's a valid point. Now, but the argument against that is, well, that's a textbook, and you have no idea when that photo was taken, where it was taken. You can't identify the patient. The argument about Facebook is, if I tweet a photo today and say, look at this really cool thing I saw, people are going to know where I am. They know where my Facebook account is based from. They also know that it probably happened in the last 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is, it's easier to identify that patient, and that's what the argument is. That because that actually has happened a few times. Patients have made the case in court that beyond a reasonable doubt they could identify themselves in that photo, even though the photo might have been of a skin condition on their arm, and it was only their arm. It may have been so unique that everybody in the hospital heard about it, and then everybody went home and told everybody in their family about it. And then it kind of got around, and then it was kind of easier to figure out. But you're right. You know, textbooks and medical journals, they have a lot more leeway because I think they're more legally protected, and also it's harder to pinpoint exactly who that patient was or where it was taken. But but I see what you're saying, though.
Well, certainly the medical professionals are the ones that have to be cautious, but the ones that get all the benefit and virtually no risk unless they take bad advice are the patients and the people who can actually use the information.
Absolutely.
We interviewed last week, one of the interviews you were not on, and I say it again because it was a good one, man. Okay. Clinical Trial Select.
Okay.
It's a search engine. I don't know where you were. Let's try to think where you were.
I was absent.
You were somewhere. You were like traveling somewhere. Investigator meeting.
Okay.
You were doing something, man. But anyways, I interviewed Etienne Thomas. He's the CEO and founder of Clinical Trial Select. It's a search engine for life-threatening clinical trials. So here's an example of what you can use that for, and you can use that today. If you have a life-threatening medical condition, okay, and these are his numbers, not mine, so he must have researched them. He said 50% of the time, a clinical trial would be the best alternative. Now, it's only offered 3% of the time. Oh. So you got 47% of people who would actually benefit, but their doctors, they don't know much about clinical trials, so they don't offer that as an alternative. What Clinical Trial Select does, if you go there and you type in your condition, you can print out tons of data about that particular clinical trial, print it out, bring it with you to your doctor and say, hey, what do you think? Now your doctor's more likely to refer you. Or if he doesn't, he'll tell you why, as opposed to just not bringing it up at all.
That is, I think, one of the number one things that I wish that patients knew. Because patients go to their doctor and they think that their doctor knows everything, okay? And they think they also give them all the alternatives. They just think that this is changing a little bit, but medicine used to be very much the doctor up here, the patient down here, the doctor knows everything. But it's not becoming that at all, especially with social media. It's more so even. And I always say this to people a lot. I say, a good doctor is absolutely a good advocate, but you can't forget for one moment that you are your own best advocate, and you really have to do your homework on your medical conditions And because, I mean, we can look at studies that say, like, you can look at a simple study that I've heard of many times that says that if a patient goes into his doctor's office, says they have, let's say, seasonal allergies, and there's dozens of seasonal allergy medications out there, and let's say the patient asks for one because they saw it on TV or whatnot, they are very, very likely to walk out of that office with a prescription for that drug, right? So we know that that's true. But that's also true if you go into that office and you have a condition that there are clinical trials going on for. Your doctor very well may not know about it. And if you go in there with a paper and say, I did my research and this is a clinical trial that I want you to help me become part of, it's going to be really hard for the doctor to give you a reason why that's a bad idea. You know, at least, I mean, it might be a bad idea, but at least it's going to make the doctor consider that. Because I can tell you from personal experience, there are some doctors out there, not all, certainly not, but there are some who that's not even on their radar, clinical trials. You can go in with anything, with a really, a really rare illness or even a really common condition that is researched heavily, and that's just not on their radar. And it's up for the patient to research. So that is a fantastic idea, and I would encourage all patients to do that, to really do their homework on their own medical conditions, and then collaborate with your doctor. Go into your doctor and create that discussion. It's going to help your relationship with your doctor because your doctor now knows you're interested in your health. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of people, especially nowadays, a lot of people are so inundated with health knowledge of every kind, coming from the TV, coming from the internet. They don't know what to believe, and they go into their doctor and assume that their doctor is going to clarify all of it for them, and the patient kind of takes a role of a subjective role or a submissive role almost, where they just say, yes, absolutely, whatever you think is right, okay. And when they're not really explained all the options. And so I would absolutely suggest that patients do that and go out there, know your options, learn them for yourself, and then take those into your doctor and have your doctor become a partner in that decision. Because you look at patients like e-patient Dave, I mean, he's the guy who found, he was his own advocate at the beginning, and he's the one who didn't take what the doctor said as set in stone. He said, no, I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept the fact that my diagnosis is dismal. I'm going to go out and I'm going to see what alternatives there are. This is America. We have a great, of course it's underfunded, but we have it's getting better though. But we have a great clinical science people in this country, and a lot of really great clinical trials going on. And people need to realize that. We have a lot of diseases, cures are possible. It's just a question of funding, and it's a question of time, and it's a question of politics. But there's a lot of cures that I'm hoping to see within my lifetime that I know could exist today if there weren't those problems, as you guys know much better than I, problems with government funding, problems with politics, insurance companies, all kinds of funding issues. But we have the brains in America, and we have the means to really make a difference, but we just got to get out there and get more people involved.
Oh yeah, and Don could talk about politics all day, but I will shift gears dramatically right now. Are you going to be doing residency?
Yes, as I said, I'm starting residency in July.
Okay, now I was always curious, do they force you residents to do clinical trials?
Good question. Actually, it depends on the specialty, but virtually all do mandate a resident to do research. They have to do their own research project. Whether
so you
or
will
not
be a clinical trial guru yourself pretty soon.
Well, I am going into a field. I'm going into family medicine, which isn't notorious for doing research or clinical trials. The reason being, a lot of people who go into primary care are their personality type is just not stereotypically conducive to that. But there definitely is the opportunity and there are many family doctors who do great research. But what residencies, virtually all residencies in America, do mandate that a resident does a research project. And I think a residency director put it to me best when I was asking her about that. She said the reason we like to make people do research is so that when they graduate from residency, if they choose not to ever participate in research again, the reason should be that they don't like it. It shouldn't be that they don't know how to do it, and which we find is a big problem. When people have no idea what clinical research is, they don't know how to begin doing it, then of course they're not going to want to do it because they don't know anything about it. But if they're forced to kind of get into it, then it's fine if they don't want to do it, but at least now they know that it exists and they know how to do it if they want to. Because there is, so most residents, I would say, they do a lot of longitudinal studies for their research, such as, how does this type of treatment aid in patients with type 2 diabetes? How does it help them long term over my 3-year residency? Or they do things like that. There's, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of a whole host of actual clinical trials that are done by residents themselves. You will find that more so in other specialties, but they certainly do exist. But to answer your question, yes, all residents are required to do research of some type during the residency. But in some residencies, it's not as emphasized as it is in others. Yeah.
In between our sessions, I've been asking on Twitter and Facebook. If anyone has questions for Dr. Jonathan, please ask them now.
Oh, great. I haven't even checked.
I mean, like right now.
Okay.
And somebody said, this is, his name is Kishimoto. It's Takeshi Kishimoto. It's totally not related, but he says, when will the NFL owners and the NFLPA come to terms? And I don't know how that relates to you at all.
I don't either. I couldn't tell you. I know nothing about football. So
I think that's a different blog
yeah.
to catch. That's
yeah, if you can answer that one, you can retire tomorrow.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Now, going back to the clinical trial thing, in med school, do they teach you guys anything about clinical trials? I'm just curious.
Yes, actually, in my medical school, we did have a very good course during our second year, not only about research and research methods and clinical trials, but also a lot about ethics, pharmaceuticals, things like that. And I will say that the course was new, meaning I think my class was the first one that had it.
Okay.
I do believe that the AMA and the AOA require medical schools to teach certain things, such as how to interpret clinical data, things such as that. And I do think most medical schools now do incorporate that, but my school kind of used it to also incorporate things such as the research behind how you're influenced by pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical representatives, and also, but very much so, we're very well trained in how to analyze research and how to research and research methods, studies, how to lie with statistics, how people like to lie with statistics, things like that as well.
Yeah.
But of course, we could. By no means am I saying that we get extensive training in it. I mean, everybody could benefit from more, and but it is something that is taught, though.
Well, we love, nothing against the sales reps. We work in doctors' offices,
Yes.
and we love the Panera bread. We love
So
the.
you do read my tweets. Are you talking about Are you talking about the reps who bring in Panera bread to eat, or?
Yeah, they brainwash us, man.
I don't.
So,
I don't know if you've read my tweets, but I'm a big Panera bread fan. I don't know if you.
I think I did read that.
Yes, I'm actually probably the biggest Panera bread fan in the country. I go there virtually every day, so
Well, I had some yesterday brought in by a rep, and it must have been laced with their drug, but just to brainwash us.
Yes.
But I appreciate that stuff, man. I like the reps coming to the office.
Well, and I have more of a, you guys, Dan has a semi-clinical background, and of course he grew up in a clinical environment. His dad's a physician.
Yeah.
My background is business and marketing and sales for years, and a lot of it I don't see anything wrong with, because when you're pushing your product out there, you have to sell your product. And if you have, as a doctor, 10 different products to choose from, which one are you going to use?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, somebody has to get you to use that product. And it's the same thing if you go out and buy a car. You know, you've got Ford, you've got Chevy, Lexus, Honda. Someone has to sell those products. And I think that as far as I'm concerned, it's the equal playing field for everybody. And when they stop the physician, I mean, I understand certain things because in the earlier days, physicians were literally making a living off of pharmaceutical reps.
Yes.
But I understand curving a lot of that, but they've gotten to the point where it's almost completely cut out.
Yes.
I mean, we had to go through we in research had to go through training on that. It has nothing to do with us, but
yes,
we go through that whole ethical training of.
Oh yeah, man. We did a 4-hour. We did clinical trials. For those of you that don't know by now, and we had to do this thing where it was like a 4-hour training of how we will not be persuaded and influenced by drug reps that come into our office to speak with our doctors. Because most of the time they're speaking to us because we're eating the food and the doctor's seeing patients. So they want their signatures, but they talk to us. And so I know now that I'm not allowed to ask to go out to a baseball game.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not allowed to ask for liquor.
That's true.
And that's about it. I mean, I don't know what else I'm allowed to do.
Well,
but here, real quick, and my whole thing behind it, most physicians, even if you got those 10 medications, you're going to refer what best works for your client.
mm-hmm.
Try this one, you might try this one, try this one. You might try all 10 to see what works and what doesn't work. And then after a while, you have enough experience on your own to know which medication is going to work better in what condition. And you're going to do what's best for your client, because what's best for your client is best for you. I don't care if that drug rep took you out and spent $200 on a dinner. By the end of the day, you want to keep practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is another very big topic in medicine today. Of course, doctors do want to do what's best for their patients at the end of the day. But I do want to bring up a few points here. First of all, to just clear that out of the way, I believe it was in 2009 or 2008, I think it was 2009, pharmaceutical reps started to become absolutely prohibited from giving away anything other than food for the purpose of education. So
yes,
exactly.
I always ask,
yeah,
Morton's, please, Morton's and Cheesecake Factory.
And they're capped at how much they can spend on that as well.
But it used to be they could come in, they could give all the pens they wanted, they could give notepads, they could give vacations, they would give cruises sometimes, they would give entertainment tickets to games, they could give anything they wanted.
Yeah.
And literally some doctors used to, they'd be flown on these private jets and they'd go to these islands and have these vacations, and then they'd have like a 1-hour long workshop about the drug. So
Yeah.
that used to be the way that it was, and then I think for the right reasons that became prohibited. Now they can't even give out a pen.
Yeah, we don't have pens.
Yeah,
For the first time, we had to.
And they gave out some nice pens.
And they used to have nice pens too. I have
never
a collection
had a shortage
of them, but yeah, I mean you can only get them on eBay now. I mean,
Yeah, we never had a shortage of pens in the office. There were like Viagra, all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
And now we had to go to Staples for the first time ever and buy pens.
Yeah.
And we didn't even know where to order them from.
No.
We're like, where's the drug rep pens?
What I would do is my office was directly across from our PI's office, and I would always tell the drug rep, you cannot go in there and see him unless you drop a pen off him.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Really nice pens. I have a whole collection of them at home.
Well, now I do that with food. I'm like, hey, you got to hook me up with a Panera Bread, and then, we'll get you your signatures, but I need that food first.
But Jonathan, I have a question for
Sure.
you. We were talking about how physicians are being instructed in med school and how to conduct research or involve in research. But do they actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, of how much paperwork's involved, how there's regulatory stuff you have to get involved, and things like that? Do they talk about those things?
Are you talking about in order to do research? Are we really educated on the actual practical nuts and bolts aspect of it? We are, but I don't think it's as in depth as we need to have in order to fully understand it. But I will say that medical students do have the opportunity to do research of their own, and a lot of them do. A lot of them do conduct their own clinical research, and they are fully aware of it. I mean, we have a general idea, and we do read about it, but I don't think anybody really has a good understanding of it unless you do research yourself. And I must say, I mean, probably the majority of medical students have either participated in clinical research themselves. I know you were saying earlier that you were interested in medicine at one point, probably because of that, Dan, and so you understand that. I mean, me, even as an undergrad, I was a psychology major, but I was very involved in the psych research that we did, which is conducted in a very similar way. And so I think I have a better appreciation for research based on that. But yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think you really understand unless you do it, although we do read about it. But most medical schools do not mandate that the student does research while they're in medical school, unless you're doing an MD, PhD, which quite a few people do, and those are becoming more popular. But
Okay.
but no, you really just need to do it to have a full understanding.
Well, back to the whole, like, you know, not to focus on the sales rep thing.
That's important,
But
though. Yeah.
It is important because
No.
before we started recording, Jonathan and I were talking about ways in which physicians are getting their information.
Yeah, and
Right.
exactly.
And I'd like you to kind of shed some light on that for
Sure,
us.
sure. You know, the whole pharmaceutical rep issue is a hot potato in medicine because there's a lot of opinions on it, and there's physicians who say, well, it doesn't matter how many free meals at Panera Bread or how many vacations I get, I'm going to make a decision based on what's best for the patient. And he or she may truly think that and truly feel that. But there has been research done in that field, and this is something that we did learn very clearly, at least in my medical school. There has been research done on that shows that even though you believe that you are completely uninfluenced by pharmaceutical representatives, that you subconsciously are influenced just by the fact that they give you anything, that they give you a lunch, that they give you a pen. If they give you anything, you are subconsciously influenced at some level. And that's been shown in research. And I unfortunately don't have the links right now, but I'll try to get those because that was some really interesting research. One of my professors who taught that course actually was so involved in that and so adamant about that his whole career as a physician, he refused to ever see a pharmaceutical rep, and he refused to ever have anything with any drug name or any drug maker name in his office or in his possession. And he just refused. So he didn't have a pen. And this was back in the glory days of pharmaceuticals where they would give you pens and everything, and he just refused. But nowadays what I find, because I've been in a bunch of clinics and a bunch of hospitals, that there's kind of a happy medium between the two that a lot of doctors do. I mean, some doctors, for instance, they don't allow the pharmaceutical rep to even come back. They have to stay in the waiting room and wait for the doctor to come back, sign their computer, and they can give their 2-3 minute spiel to the doctor. That's if the rep is lucky. Then there are other doctors who they don't care if the rep walks back into their office at any time they want and walks into the sample closet and puts in their samples and moves the competitors' samples. They don't care. You know, they just don't care. They just want free samples, and they also don't think they're going to be.
It sounds familiar.
Exactly, and yeah, and I've seen that happen too. But I've seen both ends of the spectrum. And there's a lot that I could say about this, but I'll try to give you the highlights. Is that a lot of doctors think they're doing their patients a lot of good by just giving them free samples. And there is also some research out there that shows that, let's say you come in and you have high cholesterol, and I give you a drug for high cholesterol that I have a sample of. I think because you don't have insurance, let's say. Now, I think I'm doing a really good deed because you don't have insurance, and I'm giving you this drug that I have a sample of. Now, the reason I have a sample of that drug is because it's an expensive drug and because it's not generic. And so I give you this drug, right? Let's say I put you on this drug. 3 months later, I check your blood work, and your cholesterol is really improved from that drug. But now I'm out of samples. most people think, well, that's okay. Now he'll just write me a prescription for the cheap generic stuff. But the research shows that the doctor doesn't want to do that when they see that you're really having so much benefit from that drug that he or she really want to keep you on that drug, and they'll try to figure out a way to do that. And the patient might be more likely to have to pay out of pocket for it. Of course, this is in all scenarios, but this is one of them. So when a doctor's giving away the free samples thinking it's completely, totally benign, that's not always the case. So I just think that has to be pointed out to patients too, that they think they'll just get free samples, and when those run out, they'll just go to the generic stuff. That's not always what ends up happening. And you know, the other end of the spectrum is what I was talking about with you earlier, was a lot of these doctors and who, especially those in primary care who see 20, 30 patients a day, and then they're going to the hospital and doing rounds, they literally do not have time. They can't even make the time to sit down and go through journal articles. And so they are really reduced to bullet points that they might get in Hippocrates or one of their PDA applications, or maybe an email they get from the AMA or AOA that says, you know, this is a new black box warning for this drug. But when those drug reps come back, and I've witnessed hundreds of drug rep interactions, and when they come back and when they get to talk to the doctor for sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes 2 minutes, it's usually longer when they offer a free lunch, but you know, even if the drug rep says, you know, hey, Dr. Smith, a new study was done on this drug which shows that it's, you know, the side effects really are improved for patients with X, Y, and Z. Here's the study, you know, for you to read. But let me just give you a highlight. So basically that, you know, they basically tell them the final sentence of the conclusion. The doctor's going to say, oh, that's great, thank you very much. And this paper is going to go on his or her desk and never be read. In many cases, not all of them. There are some doctors who are very good about it, but. So what I mean is the drug rep does have value, I think, in some way, because a lot of these companies, you know, a lot of the research is funded by, or although it's funded by the company, of course, you know, it is peer reviewed by third parties, and there is some evidence to it. And you know, we have to admit the pharmaceutical industry in this company, it does save lives. It is good, you know, it does help people, and you know, so we have to realize that the pharmaceutical interaction with those pharmaceutical representatives can have that benefit, but you just have to realize, and this is what I realize too as a future physician, that I realize that I'm going to be influenced. I'm not going, even though I don't think I am and I don't want to be. I acknowledge that it's going to influence me in some way, but so the question becomes: do I think that influence is justified by gaining that knowledge about that drug that might help me treating a patient or treating many patients? So it's really an interesting, and very complicated notion. But you just have to think of it from many different spectrums. But I like the lunches too. I like Panera Bread. Yeah, the drug reps bring in Panera Bread too to our lunches, and I love Panera Bread. And I go there all the time. So I don't assuage it, and they love it too, because they know that when you're sitting there eating, you're forced to listen to them for at least 15 minutes, you know, and but
Have the body. Yeah, don't be swayed by the Panera Bread.
That's right. And no, it's funny because I'm really picky in what I order at Panera Bread. Like I don't, and usually the stuff that they bring isn't stuff that I would necessarily order. And one time I was complaining about that on Twitter. I was like, I wish they would bring, you know, a Fuji apple chicken salad instead of a classic cafe salad, or whatever I said. And somebody tweeted and said, who used to be a pharmaceutical rep, and said, believe me, if you just tell them the day before what you want them to bring, they'll bring anything you want. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But
yeah.
I don't.
Our staff got so good at that. Yeah, we order like for 20 people.
Oh yeah,
and there's 10 of us there.
Yeah, and I actually I've been at offices where they bring the office staff, you know, a lunch, and then they bring the doctors their own personalized orders from that restaurant. You know, so in these styrofoam containers, so they can sit down like royalty and eat them while everybody else has to self-serve.
Yeah, but they are getting stricter, because I did try. I'm a business person. I tried to finance our company's Southwest Clinical Trials Christmas party. I tried to have some of the reps do it.
Oh yeah, they can.
call up our reps, and they're like, sorry, this is not 2005. We would have gladly done it then, but we can't do it now.
Yeah, that's much more difficult.
And I got to pay for it myself.
Well, what you do is you get enough of them where each one of them will put in $25.
Yeah.
I think that's their max.
I don't know what their max is, but yeah, it's definitely changed.
Now let's talk about your show. As we wrap up here, you're gonna graduate in 2 weeks.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
People are waiting, man. Are you gonna start putting out episodes, or?
Well, I'll give you all the true story behind this, and a special hello to all my viewers of the Dr. Jonathan Live show. But that's a show that I started about a year ago, and I did maybe an episode every month or so, and just kind of for fun. And people ask me what kind of show is it. It's a medical comedy entertainment variety show, if that makes any sense. So usually we have a lot of fun at the show. I have some co-hosts. We have broken a few barriers in that we do a live show through Ustream, and we stream live video feeds. We've gotten up to 3, so I've actually done the show where I've had 2 other live feeds going in addition to my own. And it's kind of quirky to set up, and there's a lot of problems with it, but it's a lot of fun. My goal has been to do that show more frequently, and I haven't been able to because I'm in the process of relocating for residency. But once I'm officially in Chicago, where I'm moving to, I am going to hopefully have a more standardized set for the show, and hopefully do it more regularly and have guests on and do it live.
We want to be regulars, man.
Yeah, you guys are going to be on my show, absolutely, and
Oh, wonderful.
And you guys appreciate how hard it is to get guests when you're first starting out on the show, but as you guys see with your success in your show, people just start ringing your doorbell and just wanted to be on your show. So
big thanks to Sarah Siegler.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine too.
So, yeah.
Sarah Siegler, Eat Patient Dave, clinical trial author Alex O'Mara. He wrote The Promise and Peril of Clinical Trials.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the 3 guests we've had on, like some of the first guests, and we want to thank you all for that.
Oh yes, and a shout out to those people. You're all invited on my show too. So it's but what I'm hoping to do is record the episodes and have them on my YouTube site for later viewing, because currently they're only live shows.
Jonathan, you're kind of going away.
Losing some signal here.
Yeah, I had a little signal. I'm getting a signal issue, but okay, should be back.
Time Warner or Verizon for that.
Yes, thanks to the folks over there. But my goal is I actually have those original videos recorded, but I'm not going to release them until I'm settled. So in a few weeks, I'll be releasing some of the episodes for people to watch who weren't able to see it live. But then we're going to be hoping to do more shows, and we're going to hope to get a much better set. I have an idea for a set that that's taking a lot of work to create, but I got my microphone already, so that's all that you need. A microphone and a body, and you can do a show. But yeah, so I encourage everybody to tune into that. But for now, you can check out my Twitter page. I'm Dr. Jonathan on Twitter. Check out my Twitter page, tweet me, and you'll get all the updates for my show will be there, and that's where you can learn about it. So
very good,
I look forward to it.
Yeah, and this was really fun today. We thank you for taking out the time. It's our first ever Skype. We've wanted to do it before, but people have said, no, you know what, just get my voice.
Yes, I know. I feel for you. I run into that problem too when I interview people. Nobody wants to ever appear on webcam, and then I kind of realized that's probably why when we were kids and they told us that we'd have video phones by the time we were grown up, why that never happened, because nobody wants to be on video phone. So there was no necessity for it except in my mind, because I think it would be fun and I don't mind being on video. But yeah, it's hard to get people on video, but on my show you got to be on video to be on it, so that's one of the caveats. Yes.
Well, hopefully this breaks the ice for some people, and yeah, we're definitely looking forward to your show.
Thank you. Well, so am I. I'm looking forward to it as well, to the move, and if people want to know what it's going to be like, I want you to think about Red Eye on Fox News, but with a little bit more wit and a little bit lower budget. But that's what it'll be. That's what I want it to be like.
Okay.
I thought more of like Conan O'Brien. Maybe.
Conan as well, because I do a monologue and I have a theme song.
Okay.
Conan is
Okay.
one of the people I look up to. So I was fortunate enough to be in his show in the audience before he moved to California. It was a lot of fun. So shout out to Conan, although he doesn't follow anybody on Twitter.
Yeah.
So well, he follows one person, but I don't know who that is. But
Follows one person who got 1 million followers in a minute.
yeah, that's right. Just from him. I think she
Yeah.
lost a lot of them now though. But
Probably.
yeah, but I always say to people, I'm always curious who my 1 millionth follower is going to be. And then they're like, but you only have like 2,000 followers. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm curious who my 1 millionth follower is going to be. You know,
Start someplace.
you got to think big. Yeah, Conan O'Brien could follow me one day, and or Lady Gaga or Britney Spears. That'd be.
Well, you're certainly in the right space at the right time, graduating at the right time,
Yeah.
using the right tools. I think the stars are aligned for you, Dr. Jonathan.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and for you folks as well. I really think that what you're doing has a lot of potential, and I'm excited by what you're doing as well because we gotta get patients more involved in what's happening out there and get the word out about clinical trials and why they even exist, which is to help out the patients. It's why they exist, and they got to know about it. And so what you guys are doing is great. Kudos to you, and
Thank you.
I hope to be on your show again, and hopefully get to work with you at some point in my career.
Yeah. Knowledge is power.
That's right.
Awareness. Yeah, awareness.
Absolutely.
So, yes, thank you for that. And, yeah, we'll talk off the camera, and we will put this up on YouTube. Thank you to YouTube for letting us put an infinite amount of lengthy videos online.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they won't cancel that privilege after this video.
Hopefully not. Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Are you welcome, Jonathan?
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Success.
Okay.
Okay, we're off the camera.